Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to session 19 of Human Resource Management course. I am your instructor, Dr. Shikha and Khera from School of Management, Delhi Technological University. Students, let us now today dig into understand human resource research. Since without research, no theorization can take place, and the theories, various principles or content that you study through books or through other material is primarily an outcome of the research that has been done in the area. So what is a research? Research fundamentally means finding something which is already existing in the universe, but it's unknown to us. So there are many tools, techniques, methodologies to collect the information and data from the universe, from the surroundings, give them meaning, interpret it, and theorize them in the form of some principles or theories, which then become the guidelines or information for future generations to work upon. So in the field of human resource management also, in past 1 century or maybe more than that, a lot of research has been done to understand the behavior, attitude, and the perspectives of human resources. And with this understanding, it makes a manager more comfortable to handle the human resources at the place of work, to understand their aspirations, to know what kind of different needs like affiliation, growth, relatedness, self-esteem, what exactly are the desires or aims or ambitions or aspirations of human beings at the place of work that need to be catered to so that tomorrow they perform better. So let us have a detailed insight on various methodologies used in HR research, how different sampling techniques are utilized, how hypothesis is formulated, then how the testing is done with the help of different statistical tools, and how inferences is made, how report writing can be done in HR research. This particular session, if you study in with serious effort, probably can help you draft a research paper for yourself or maybe write a report for yourself. So let's begin understanding the research part of human resource management. So this is just an overview of what we are going to do initially in the initial phase of this session. So this talks about foundation of HR research, and where we shall be discussing on the introduction, types of research, HR research process, and ethics in HR research. So the introduction of HR research talks about that one of the ways of expressing what management research is finding out is in a systematic way or in an order to increase knowledge about people and processes who are involved in the management of work organization. So what is research? It is a systematic way to increase the knowledge. Knowledge about whom, about what, about the people and the processes. So there are many different ways of understanding and explaining the nature and purpose of human resource management. For example, many researchers from Brim et al., Beer et al., Legge and Story, they have mentioned that what can be different components, how we can understand and explain the nature and purpose of HRM. So basically research is about what? Research is about the different ways of understanding and explaining the nature and purpose of HRM. So it says that how we see the people of the organization. Maybe we see them as strategic resource so that we achieve the competitive advantage. Ensures that HR activities and policies are linked with organizational strategy, designing and implementation of good personal system based on a coherent approach to managing the employment relationship, and planning to ensure that organization has the people and skills it needs to achieve its objective. So this is what we look forward to when we go for or go ahead with HR research. So it says that the systematic inquiry into HR issues to increase knowledge and underpin the effective actions tomorrow. This is done with the help of investigation in the field of human resource management. So we do nothing but we do investigate, and on the basis of this investigation, later on we can take certain actions, we can take certain decisions. These decisions which involve employment relationship and other aspects. So what is the purpose and scope of HR research? It is most effective in developing HR practices and is supportive of HR activities. First, it seeks to evaluate the present position in the concerned area of research. Where does HR stand today? It facilitates the prediction of future. So from present to future, how events will be shaped in coming times. Then comes evaluation of current programs, practices and policies. To what extent are they effective? So when we talk about evaluation, we are judging their effectiveness. It prepares an objective base for revision of current organization programs, practices and policies. It paves the way and means for building up capabilities and attitudes of the employees regularly, because through research we get to know how to shape these attitudes and capabilities. Research will enable us to do so. It facilitates the evaluation of proposed HR policies and programs, and it facilitates change. Change facilitation is very important so that we replace old techniques to the new ones. Now, what all types of research can be there in HR? So we can have applied as well as fundamental research. So under this category, research can either be applied. Applied research means which is action research, or fundamental, which is a basic or a pure research. So applied research, students, listen to this carefully so that you have a fundamental insight on what kind of researches take place. So applied research aims at finding a solution for an immediate problem. Okay, just remember this. And this problem is faced by society or an industrial business organization, where, for example, we have a immediate problem of environmental pollution. This is a social problem. When it comes to, we talk about HR problem, from HR problem perspective, health hazard to employees in a factory. Which factory? Where fumes are in a factory where dangerous fumes are there. So what we have to do, we have to find an immediate solution for this problem. Whereas in the fundamental research, it is mainly concerned with generalizations and with formulation of theory. So where we generalize that, okay, these all things can take place, and because of which some new transformations in society can be foreseen. So gathering knowledge for knowledge's sake. Now here gathering knowledge is what I mentioned in terms of research is that it is already available in universe. By universe, I mean in the surroundings. And we are only, what we are doing, we are gathering that knowledge. It is called as pure or basic research, when we gather knowledge for the knowledge's sake. And research concerning some natural phenomena relating to pure mathematics are examples of fundamental research. Now, research studies concerning human behavior are carried on with a view to make generalizations about human behavior. So what we can generalize, students? So we can generalize human behavior, that behavior is outcome of its consequences. This was given to us during in one of the learning theories, and by this we learn that employee behavior, say they come late to the organization, so that is a behavior. They do not complete their task on time, that is a behavior. They take leave without information, that's a behavior. So when we study these behavioral patterns in terms of, with the help of research, we are just generalizing that how employees are behaving. If I can recollect, and you people must have studied the motivation theories, these under the motivation theories, one of the theory was by McGregor. So this scientist McGregor has given theory X and Y, where he says theory X people are the ones who inherently dislike work. and theory why people are the ones who inherently like work. So what is it? This is the behavior, and based on the behavior, the scientist or the theorist categorized the employees and generalized it for the working population. So this is how the generalization in the pure research takes place, and in the action research or applied research, some problems are rectified. So as it says, human behavior are examples of fundamental research, but research aimed at certain conclusions. Say if you want to reach to a solution, then it is a applied research. Research is to identify social, economic and political trends. So that is, we have to go. So the central aim of applied research is to discover a solution for something which is a pressing practical problem. So let's quickly understand with the help of this exhibit, the basic research and the applied research. So in this, we have discussed this purpose in the previous slide, where we talked about that why this basic research is what we call as the fundamental research, and the applied research which is action oriented. Let us see the context. Under basic research, undertaken by people based in universities, choice of topic and objectives determined by the researcher, and the flexible time scale. So here the choice of topic is what you can choose, since it is more of a basic research where we are going to give some generalizations. While in applied research, this is undertaken by variety of settings including organization and universities. Objectives are negotiated with the originator and tight time scales because we have to come up with some action orientation. Then research can be divided into two categories: quantitative versus qualitative research. The fundamental difference between the two terms, students, the qualitative and quantitative, is the quantitative research is based on data driven. We have the quantitative inputs from the survey instruments, while in qualitative research it is more of observation, secondary data-based information, and then we can have techniques like focus group interviews, etc. in the qualitative part. So qualitative deals primarily with the secondary data, quantitative deals with the mathematical or quantitative data that is generally taken in the primary source of data. So the further detailing of these two concepts include that quantitative is based on measurement of quantity, and while qualitative is, on the other hand, is concerned with the qualitative phenomena that is relating to quality or kind. For instance, there is an example when we are interested in investigating the reasons for human behavior, why people think or do certain things. If that is the question in my mind, we quite often talk to motivation research. It is an important type of qualitative research, and this type of research aims at discovering the underlying motives and desires via in-depth interviews for this purpose. So, when we have to identify underlying motives and desires, we use in-depth interviews for this purpose. So, that means it is a qualitative research. On the other hand, the techniques of such research are word association test, sentence completion test, story completion test, similar other projective techniques which help us to find out the underlying motives. So these are the tests, or you can say tools, by which qualitative research can be done. The attitude or opinion research, how people feel, what they think, are particular subject to institution, is also a qualitative research. So qualitative research is primarily about the behavioral science to discover the motives of human behavior. And with the help of this research, we can find out what various factors motivate the people. This is very important because if we can know what motivates people, we can incorporate those motivators at our place of work. So students, after discussing the quantitative and qualitative aspect of the research, let us move on and discuss about various research designs. So there are, as you can see, three types of research designs. The first one is exploratory research design, then descriptive research design, and causal research design. There are certain features on which we can compare these three research designs. So the first feature on which we can compare is objective. Exploratory research design has an objective to explore new ideas or new problems, while descriptive research design describes the characteristics or trends which are prevailing. And causal research design establishes a cause and effect relationship. The nature of the three research designs differ from each other. So it is a flexible and qualitative research design. That is, the topic can be chosen by the researcher and it is qualitative in nature, while descriptive is very much structured and quantitative, and causal is highly controlled and experimental. So what causes what? Okay. So if you have, for example, we all get sometime or other, we get some viral infections or bacterial infections. So what happens? We find a cause for the symptoms that we are getting. Symptom can be we have a stomachache. So stomachache is the effect and cause can be a bacterial infection. So that is highly controlled experimental cause and effect design. In exploratory research, the hypothesis generation takes place, while in descriptive research, data description is the major concern, and in causal, we have hypothesis testing. So there is a difference between hypothesis testing and generation. In hypothesis generation, we are probably coming up with some modeling, while in hypothesis testing, through the statistical techniques, we test whether the hypothesis has a significant relationship or not. That is, hypothesis is accepted or rejected. Example for exploratory research in human resource domain can be finding reasons for low morale. So here we are trying to find out the qualitative output of some information that we can gather from employees. While in descriptive, we measure the job satisfaction level. So that is data driven and it has a quantitative aspect. In causal relationship with respect to HR, we test if incentives increase the performance. I am sure students, with the help of these examples, it has made it clear to you the difference between three research designs, especially with respect to HR domain. So this is the HR research process, which says that we have to define a research problem. So initially in the previous slide, we have defined the problem. One problem can be low morale, so we have to find the reason. Second problem can be we want to measure job satisfaction level. Third problem can be that whether there is any relationship between incentive and the performance. So once the research problem is done, the second step is to review the literature, review the concepts and theories, review previous research findings and identify the gap. Here we do the gap identification in what exactly has already been done and what has not been done. So gap is what has not been done in this area that we can focus upon later on. And then comes the formulation of hypothesis. This hypothesis is an assumption statement that something contributes significantly to the other thing, or the null hypothesis says it does not contribute significantly to the X, does not contribute significantly to the other factor, that is Y. Then we go for designing the research, that is including what sample design, sampling technique we are using, then how we will be collecting the data, how will we analyze the data with the help of various statistical tools, and how we will interpret and report. So students, in this session, I shall try to cover all of these aspects to make you understand how a research is conducted. So this is what we have just now. You can have a quick look on it. These are the steps that we just now saw in the previous diagram. These are the steps. So we have certain examples here, identifying and defining the research problems. So to clearly state what HR issue or question needs investigation. For example, here the example of research question is, why has employee turnover increased by 20% in last 6 months? It is a very major problem, students. Employee turnover is number of people leaving the organization in 1 year. So it says that 20% people have left. So hypothetically, if we talk about if there are 1,000 employees, then approximately 200 employees left the organization, which is a big, I would say, a shock to the organization and a question mark why this is happening. So review of literature, second step, will help us study what previous researchers or HR experts have already found on the topic, that why people leave the organization. Then with the help of some sources like research journals, scopus papers, company reports or HR case studies, we can identify this information of review of literature. So they are the sources for review of literature. Then comes Another example, review existing studies on employee retention, job satisfaction, organizational commitment to identify theories and variables. This will be the part of review of literature. So we have hypothesized the first step, that is the research problem. Now we can review the theories on various aspects of HR and identify variables for ourselves, for our study. The step 3 is setting research objectives and hypothesis. So here to define what exactly the research aims to achieve and what relationship will be tested. Because we wish to know that why employee turnover has increased, we have to give a specific assumption to it. That will be our aim for the research. And assumption between 2 variables or 3 variables, that will be the relationship. So there can be, salaries have decreased, so employee turnover has increased, or working conditions have decreased, so employee turnover has increased. Market is giving better salaries, so employee turnover has increased. So what is the relation with other variables that we have identified? So example here can be for research objective first, to analyze the relationship between employee engagement and turnover intention. So turnover intention is why people leave the organization. Employee engagement is that he is given the task which he is interested in. He feels happy while he works, or he doesn't feel happy. So we want to understand this relationship in the context of the organization we are studying. Then after research objective, we formulate a hypothesis which says higher engagement level reduce the turnover intention. So that means there exists a significant relationship between employee engagement and turnover, and this hypothesis says that it has an inverse relationship. If employee engagement increases, the turnover intention decreases. After the hypothesis formulation, the next step is research design. So under the research design, we have to choose an approach. I hope you remember 3 approaches that we studied. We studied the approach of exploratory research, descriptive research, and causal research. So under exploratory, to explore the unknown issues. In the descriptive, to describe the characteristics. And in causal, to test the cause and effect relationship. So in the research, we have to decide how the research, in the research design, we have to decide how the research will be conducted, the plan or the framework. So in a descriptive study, using surveys to measure engagement level across the department. So what we are planning? We are planning that we will go with the descriptive study on employee engagement levels, and this will be collected, the information will be collected through survey method across, and the scope of the study means where it will be done across different departments. So what will be studied, how will be it studied, and what will be the scope, all is mentioned in the research design. Then comes data collection. So to gather accurate and relevant data for analysis, it is important that we choose the right data collection method and type. So there are 2 data types, primary data and secondary data. What is a primary data? Collected first-hand surveys, interviews and observations which the observer has collected himself. He has not relied on any other source for such collection. Under the secondary data, the data is already available in the form of reports, HRIS data, published research, etc. Generally, in the research, we carry the blend of both the datas. We collect data in the primary source also and secondary source also. But specifically, based on the research design, we may only go for primary or secondary as well. Now, the research design that we have chosen in the current problem is the descriptive design. Under descriptive, we have to conduct a survey to measure the engagement level across the departments. How do we do this survey? We do an online employee satisfaction survey using a Google form. So here what we are doing the primary data collection. I hope students this is getting clear to you. Now once the data is collected through the Google form, the next stage is step 6 of data analysis and interpretation. Now, what is analysis and interpretation? What happens when we have collected the raw data from the respondents in the form of Google Forms. Now we have the data which has to be transformed into some meaningful information, and that can be done with the help of analysis of the data, wherein we will get to see that, okay, few people have just written few lines or few words for the sake of writing it, and maybe they do not mean it. So we have to identify the outliers, or maybe we have to identify those people who have done a blind tick on the negative questions. So the response is not appropriately managed. So thus, during the data analysis, we remove those discrepancies from the data and we try to interpret it. So if on a question we asked on a Likert scale from 1 to 5 and the response is coming 3, so that means the opinion of the people who undertook that survey is 3, which meant neutral. So they are very much neutral to this question. So if the question was that I feel highly engaged at my place of work. Now, for I feel highly engaged at my place of work, if I have given as 3, which meant the quantitative number 3, which meant neutral, and not me, but other of my colleagues have also given 3. So the mean average is coming, if we talk about the simple mean statistics, so the average is coming as 3, which means that it is a neutral approach towards this, or neutral opinion towards this statement. So this is how, with the help of advanced tools, like, we have different softwares like SPSS, which is the statistical package for social sciences. So in this we conduct various statistical tests like regression analysis, correlation, or we have SEM for factor analysis, etc. T-test, ANOVA, other statistical tests are done. So with the help of these tests, we can interpret the output sheet of these tests. If we do in Excel also, we get an output sheet. So the output sheet of these tests help us interpret what is the opinion of people who have undertaken that survey. So let us see what are the next steps after data analysis and interpretation and how it is done. So to convert the raw data into the meaningful insight using statistical tool is step 6. Here tools can be Excel, SPSS, R or Power BI. I just mentioned few of these. And techniques can be, we can have mean value, we can have correlation, regression, ANOVA, thematic analysis. So for example, the correlation analysis reveals a positive relationship between engagement and retention. So that means if we talk about the statements given by the output given on the statements in the Google form pertaining to the relationship between engagement and employee retention, it has come out to be 0.6. So generally 0.7 and 0.75 and above is considered to be a good correlation. Now, once we have got this output, we have to write down the findings and conclusions to summarize key insights and link them back to the research question. If you remember, the research question was that is there any relationship between employee engagement and retention? So the findings will be something like employees with low engagement and poor manager support are 3 times more likely to leave. So the interpretation is improving leadership communication can enhance the retention. So here you can see, students, that with the help of statistical analysis, we can infer. Infer means we can find out what is the cause of certain things. So with the help of descriptive research, we could interpret that since employees with low engagement and poor manager support, they are 3 times more likely to leave. So we have to work on the factor of management support. That means we have to enhance it. And low engagement, so that means we have to work on increasing the engagement also. And what can be interpreted? That we can enhance the engagement, we can enhance the management support by improving the leadership communication. And if we improve leadership communication, we can enhance the retention. The last step is report writing and presentation in the research. So to communicate your results effectively to management or to academic audiences, you have to write down a report which has introduction, methodology, analysis, finding and recommendation. So basically whatever you have done in the HR research, you have to pen down in the report. So prepare an HR report showing turnover trends, data charts and proposed retention. strategies. So just now, students, we have learned how a research process takes place in the HR research. Focus was on an HR problem of employee retention or employee turnover, and how you can see with the help of a survey, a collection of primary data, application of right tool, choosing the right research design, we could interpret that we can have high retention if we increase the leadership communication. Now let's move on to another important aspect in the research. While we are conducting this research, an important aspect is, are we ethically doing it? So ethics in research is an important aspect. Word ethics is derived from the Latin word called ethos. Ethos means character. So what is the character or characteristic of the individual or phenomena or scenario, etc.? Ethics are nothing but the moral principles that govern a person's behavior, and in our context of research, it is how a person conducts an activity. So kids, you should always remember that how one conducts an activity is his ethical orientation. In simpler words, we can say ethics are nothing but the set of rules that deal with what is right and what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral, what is a good practice, what is not a good practice. We can say that ethics are researchers' responsibility, because the researcher has to take up this responsibility for ethical conduct in their own research that they are. Now, what is ethics pertaining to research? That they are taking care of right kind of collection of data from right respondents and free from biases. They are not manipulating any tool, manipulating any data, so that the results are not biased or erroneous. So first and foremost, the responsibility of a researcher is to take care of safety, dignity, rights and well-being of the participants. So this is very sensitive point. As a researcher, you must see to it that your participants are very comfortable and their information is confidentially kept. The researcher must attend to various other issues at different stages of research process. In this case, both the researcher and the participants, they have an important role to play. One's rights are others' obligations. So researcher definitely must take care of the rights of the participants. So there are different research ethic principles. Let us see what are research ethic principles. So the first research ethic principle is, whenever you are conducting a research, it is principle of honesty. That is, the reported data, method, procedure, which I just mentioned, results and publications are truthful. They are not manipulated and they are accurate also. They are not fabricated, they are not falsified, and no plagiarism is done. So the principle of objectivity obligates researcher to avoid and minimize errors in any scientific action. So we have to avoid the errors or minimize as much as possible, including experimental design, result interpretation, grant writing, actions as an expert or referee. Principle of integrity is the second principle. So it keep your promises and agreements, act of sincerity, and you should strive for consistency in your thought and action. So basically you should have an integrity towards your research work. Principle of carefulness is decisions involving researchers' work, that of others must be assessed thoroughly, carefully, fairly, and results should be validated through replication. So when you are doing literature review, you should be very thorough, very clear, and you should be taking care of assessment of other researchers' work fairly and carefully. Then principle of openness is that one must think of the presentation and publication of the work, the methods, data, results, and interpretation. All should be clearly depicted. Then comes principle of responsibility. So researchers are obligated to make efforts to ensure that their research does not duplicate research carried out by other researchers. So this is the responsibility of researcher to take into consideration while they are carrying out the research. So here at a different research stage, there are some specific examples of ethical issues and the research. So when it comes to formulating and clarifying your research topic, that is chapter 2 to 4, where literature review, research gap, etc. is done, there researchers' right to absence of sponsor coercion, sponsors' right to useful research, sponsors, gatekeepers, participants' right to quality research, all these things to be considered. So we have to take care of the privacy, voluntary nature and consideration, consent on and confidentially from where we are taking the research. Then when we are collecting your data, you should see to it that participants' deception is not there. Participants' right to withdraw should be maintained. They should be having an informed consent that we are taking information from me. Participants' safety is one's concern. Participants' right to confidentiality is also researchers' responsibility. When you process and store your data, then participants' right as an individual to processing and storing of their data should be kept, well kept. Then analyzing your data and reporting the findings, in this case also right to confidential and anonymity should be maintained. Then rights to organization with respect to right to absence of sponsor and gatekeeper coercion should be taken care. Now let's move on to identify and defining the research problem. So how to define the HR research problem? Different workplace issues are there, employee surveys to be conducted, HR matrix, organizational change, then research objective and questions, how we can have SMART objectives, how we can have hypothesis development. Let's move on to that. So how to define a research problem? What we should identify is that there must be an individual or group who has some difficulty or a problem. So there must be some objective to be attained at. If one wants nothing, one cannot have a problem. So this is very important. Problem is always that you want to attain something. There must be alternative means or course of action for obtaining the objectives one wishes to attain. And there must also be some doubt in the mind of the researcher with regard to selection of the alternatives, and some environment to which the difficulty pertains. So that means the research problem itself is that there is some difficulty, there are many alternatives, things are not clear to us, what we aim something but we are not able to achieve it. So all these can be the reasons or can be the ways by which we can identify a research problem. So technique and purpose, for the purpose involves the undertaking of following steps, generally one after the other, for identifying the research problem is statement of the problem in a general way, understanding the nature of problem, surveying the available literature, developing the ideas through discussions, and rephrasing the research problem into working propositions. So these are the steps which a researcher can take. And let us understand this scenario with the help of an example. So the technique, let us suppose that a research problem is a broad general way as it follows. So why is productivity in Japan so much higher than India? If that is the problem, then in this form the question has a number of ambiguities, such as what sort of productivity is being referred to, with what industry the same is related. We are talking about which industry productivity. Is it agriculture? Is it manufacturing? With what period of time the productivity is being talked about, in view of all such ambiguities. So in this, the statement is ambiguous. So with all these ambiguity, the question is much too general to be amenable to analysis. So the problem is, if the statement is ambiguous, it is difficult to do analysis on the generalized statements. So what we can do? We can do rethinking and discussion about the problem may result in narrowing down the question too. Now let us see the second. So this is the first version of the question. This is the second version of the question, which says, what factors were responsible for higher labor productivity of Japan's manufacturing industry during decade 1971 to 80 relative to India's manufacturing industry? So here we have removed many ambiguities. We have removed the timeline. We have removed the productivity of which industry, and we have talked about which productivity, that is categorization of productivity, labor productivity. In this second version of problem is definitely an improvement over the earlier version. Further we can rethink and rephrase. So see how we can, rethink and make a research problem. So further rethinking and rephrasing might place the problem in still better operational basis. Now the third version of the problem can be, to what extent did labor productivity in 1971 to 80 in Japan exceed that of India in respect of 15 selected manufacturing industries? So here we have narrowed the scope. scope of research. So because even in the previous example, it was manufacturing industry, but the scope is quite huge because lot of firms are there. So here we have selected 15 manufacturing industries. Then what factors were responsible for productivity differentials between the two countries by industries? With this sort of formulation, the various terms involved such as labor productivity, productivity differentials must be explained clearly. Now formulating, after we have formulated the research question, we can go for formulation of research objectives and questions. So generally, when it comes to formulating the research objectives, so we must have SMART objectives. And I think students, you are smart enough to answer what are SMART objectives. SMART objectives include S means specific, M means measurable, A means achievable, and R means realistic, T means time bound. So if we have, not only for research, but in general also, if we make our objectives and goals SMART as per the acronym definition which I said, it becomes easier to achieve them. So let us see, when it comes to research objective formulation, how we use these SMART goals. So I have just given you an explanation of these SMART goals, that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound or timely. After the development of the research objectives and questions, we move on to development of hypothesis. Now in HR context, let us see what hypothesis can be and how hypothesis can be developed. So the first is, it should provide the direction. So guides the researcher on what to test and measure. Second, hypothesis must connect theory to the practice. It links HR theories, motivation theories, leadership theories you all have studied with the real organizational data. Third, it simplifies the data collection. So it helps decide which variable to include in the questionnaire. Variable means whether it is motivational variables, whether it is leadership variables or organizational variables. And then comes, it enables statistical testing, so allows use of various tests like, for example, t-test, correlation, regression, etc. Characteristics of a good hypothesis. So we can have some, learning through the examples. A strong HR research hypothesis should be, first, it should be testable. Testable means can be verified with the data. Then the hypothesis is testable. We can test it. Example, training improves employee performance. So this is a good hypothesis where two variables, training and employee performance relationship has been identified and can be verified if we collect data on both the variables. Hypothesis should be clear and specific, not a vague or broad statement. What can be the example? Flexible work hours increase job satisfaction among IT employees. So very clearly, what is the cause and what is the effect has been defined here. Based on a theory or a logic, hypothesis should always be having an grounded theory background, so drawn from literature or prior research. According to Herzberg's two-factor theory of motivation, recognition increases motivation. So recognition is the hygiene factor, motivation is the motivational factor, and based on the previous study, now what we can do, we can test this in the current scenario, in the current organization in today's time. So timeline has changed, organization setting has changed, but the theory remains the same. Relates variables. So whatever variable we are choosing for the study, they are related to each other. So it shows direction or relationship. Job stress negatively affects the engagement. Here we are also telling the direction. When we say negatively affects the engagement, that means the increase in job stress decreases the employee engagement, or we can say they are inversely proportional to each other. The hypothesis also should be measurable, so variables can be quantified well, then only the testing can be done. So satisfaction score, turnover rate, training hours, here what are things? Things can be quantified. Score, rate, hours, these can be quantified, so they can be measured properly. Then after formulation of hypothesis, we go for research design and methodology. So here we have discussed about various research designs. Again, we shall be discussing with the help of case study also. Then sampling techniques in HR research, data collection methods and tools for data collection. Let's put some light on research design in HR studies. So research design in HR study, in case of exploratory research design, the very first design that we discussed earlier also, this can be conducted by 3 methods. Okay, so the first method of exploratory research design is the survey of relevant literature, the previous studies. So it happens to be the most simple and fruitful method in formulating precisely the research problem or developing the hypothesis, because it is backed by the literature. Hypotheses stated by earlier workers may be reviewed and their usefulness be evaluated as basis for future research. So this future research is your research problem. It may also be considered whether the already stated hypothesis suggests a new hypothesis, so that can also be explored. In this way, the researcher should review and build upon work already done by the others. Now, this is an important takeaway, students. Please carefully understand this, that your research work should always be built on any previous work that has been done. But in cases where hypotheses have not yet been formulated, the task is to review the available material for deriving the relevant hypothesis from it. The second exploratory way to conduct the research is the experience survey. So in this, we can have questionnaire, that is a survey of people who have had practical experience with the problem to be studied. Here, we generate the relationship between variables with new ideas related to the research problems. So for new ideas, we can think of having the experience survey method of exploratory research. The third exploratory research method is the analysis of insight stimulating examples. It is also a fruitful method for suggesting the hypothesis of research. Now, what we do in this, it is suitable in the area where there is little or experience to serve as a guide, or we do not have the past studies also. So the analysis of insight stimulating example can be the second category of exploratory research design. Now, after exploratory, the second research design is the descriptive or diagnostic research study. Here, in this case of descriptive, we do a comparative design through light on all points narrated above, and keeping in view that whether we have resource available for the study or not, we decide further. In the research design, in case of hypothesis testing research study, such studies require procedures that will not only reduce biases and increase the reliability. So they are more reliable. The results of this kind of study, which is based on hypothesis testing, is more reliable. So types of research design used in HR. In experimental design description, researcher manipulates one variable to see its effect on other variable. Example, testing whether a new onboarding program increases the engagement. So cause and effect between the two variables. What is one variable? New onboarding program. What is the other variable? Employee engagement. Correlation design research in HR, some studies relationship between variables without manipulation. So relationship between job satisfaction and turnover intention. Descriptive design in HR, it describes the characteristic or behavior of the employee. For example, employee demographic analysis or satisfaction survey that describes the employee's behavior. And case study design is also used. In-depth examination of single organization or HR situation or scenario. So example here can be HR transformation at Infosys or performance management at TCS. This is a case example for research. We can take up one function of HR and study it at a place, at some organization. Now, what are different sampling techniques used in HR research? In general, also these techniques are used in research, but I am focusing since on HR research in today's session. So I shall be mentioning their correlation or their connect with the HR research. So first we can categorize into two categories, probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Under the probability sampling, we have 4 sampling techniques: simple random, stratified sampling, cluster sampling and systematic sampling. Now let us have description of each first and then HR example. Simple random sampling is every employee has equal chance to be taken as a subject for analysis. So that means while we are thinking of conducting a survey, then we can select every employee has an equal chance to get as a part of survey. So here randomly selecting 100 employees for a survey based on the formula that nth employee will be selected. So nth employee can be from a list of say 500. We can think of that every 5th employee we will take or 6th employee we will take. Then stratified sampling. Stratified term itself means that we make strata. So divide population into stratas, that is departments, and sample from each. So in organizations, sampling equally from HR, finance and IT teams. So if we are taking say 50 members each from each department, so these are different stratas that we have taken. Cluster sampling is that we make cluster of the subjects from which or the sample. Select intact groups. So selecting 3 branches of a company for study. So that is a cluster sampling. Systematic sampling is every 5th employee on the list will be, so every 10th record from HRIS will be taken as a sample for the study. Then comes non-probability sampling, that is convenience, purposive, snowball and quota. So under this, convenience sampling is that surveying employees available during HR meet. So anyone and everyone can be taken as a participant, so they are easily available. Purposive sampling is based on the research purpose. So selecting only managers for leadership study. So we can only select, lower manager, supervisor, foreman for whom we are doing the study. So that is called as, or maybe in academic institution we are doing study on faculty or on students. So that is a purposive sampling. Snowball sampling is participant refers to other. So one participant knows and he refers to the other refers to the third refers to the fourth. So this is how we call it as a snowball effect. Studying freelancers through network referrals. Under the quota sampling of non-probability sampling technique, fixed number from each group are taken. So equal number of men and women employees are taken. So basically we identify the quotas. So these are different sampling techniques in HR research. Now coming on to, once we have identified that which sampling technique we would like to go for, we can then think of determining a sample size. So sample size can be determined using different formulas. So one is using a census for small population. So here one approach is to use the entire population as a sample. Although this is almost very much impossible for large populations, so this can be for smaller populations. So wherever your population is smaller, then you can do the census method of selecting the sample. Using sample size of a similar study. So another approach is to use a sample size as those of studies similar to one that you are planning. So you can take this from literature. So literature reference will be your point. Using published tables. So a third way to determine sample size is to rely on published tables which provide the sample size for a given set of criteria. Also, we can have formulas to calculate a sample size. So here, fourth approach is to determine with the help of several formulas, out of which one of the formula can be for large population. For example, Cochrane in 1963 developed the equation 1 to yield a representative sample of proportions. So here he gave a formula where valid Wn0 is the sample size, Z2 is the abscissa of the normal curve that cuts off an area alpha at the tail. So 1 minus alpha equals to desired confidence level, that is 95%. And thus the desired level of precision, E is the desired level of precision and P is the estimated proportion of attribute that is present in the population and Q is 1 minus P. So the value of Z is found in statistical table which contains the area under normal curve. So this is the one way to calculate through the formulas. Now when it comes to data collection, it is a systematic process of gathering information relevant to an HR research problem. So when we are going for evidence-based decisions, we can collect data. HR policies become data-driven, okay? An example is using engagement data to redesign the benefits in the organization. So this is evidence-based, that we are redesigning the benefits by using the engagement data. So we have an evidence of the data. Performance improvement is data helps measure impact of training on leadership. So here we are identifying the impact relationship. So tracking post-training performance will help us. Post-training performance is nothing but the improved performance. So with this improved performance, we can derive some inference. Predictive HR analytics is forecasting trends like attrition or absenteeism. We are predicting with the help of analysis, with the help of statistics. So using HRIS data to predict turnover risk. Compliance and fairness is ensure transparent HR practices. This is what we wish to. We are collecting data so that we ensure transparent HR practices. And how do we collect? By using survey data and diversity audits. Now, types of data we have already discussed with. We have primary data collected first-hand for a specific study, like employee survey on job satisfaction. Secondary data, already available data used for analysis, like HRIS records, government report, LinkedIn data, etc. Data collection tools. Primary data can be collected through observation method, interview method, through questionnaires, or through different schedules, like other methods like warranty cards, distributor audit, pantry audit, consumer panel, mechanical devices, projective techniques, depth interviews, etc. While the secondary data is which is already available in the form of various publications at state, central, local government level, various publications of foreign governments, then technical and trade journals, books, magazine, newspapers, reports, public records, statistical, historical documents, etc. Also, sources of unpublished data come under the secondary data. They may be found in diaries, letters, unpublished biographies, autobiographies, etc. Then what are different quantitative and qualitative methods with which we can conduct the study? So students, here it is a quick presentation of different qualitative and quantitative methods. So we can think of first processing the data, and then after processing we can go for analysis of data. Processing of data can be done by editing, coding, classification, tabulation, and using percentages. While the analysis of data, which is the point to discuss here, it can be descriptive and causal analysis, it can be inferential or statistical analysis, so two categories. When it comes to using descriptive or causal analysis, we have unidimensional analysis, that is one dimension, bivariate, that means two variables, analysis of two variables, multivariate means analysis of multiple variables at the same time. These are further divided into subcategories, all three of these. So unidimensional analysis for descriptive and causal analysis can be done with the help of these statistical tools like measure of central tendency, dispersion, skewness, one-way ANOVA, time series analysis, and simple correlation or regression. While bivariate, descriptive and causal analysis can be done with the help of simple regression, association of attributes, two-way ANOVA, etc. Multivariate analysis can be done with the help of multiple regression, multiple discriminant analysis, multi-ANOVA, conical analysis, and other type of analysis like factor and crustal analysis. While when we go for inferential analysis of our data or statistical analysis of our data, the estimation of parameter value is point estimate method or interval estimate method, and testing of hypothesis is done in parametric and non-parametric test or distribution test. So this is just a crisp summary of that what kind of different statistical tests are available under which category to analyze the data. So that was the quantitative part. I have already explained the descriptive inferential analysis, that is in detail here. This is descriptive and this is inferential. So moving further, all these are the different tests like correlation analysis, causal analysis. So it is between two variables. It is how one variable affects the change in another variable. Multiple regression is this analysis is to make a prediction about the dependent variable based on the covariance. Then multiple discriminant analysis is it happens to be predicting an entity's possibility of belonging to a particular group. Multivariate analysis is wherein the ratio of group variance within the group variance is worked out. So wherein the ratio among the group and within the group is compared. Then in canonical analysis, it is both measurable and non-measurable variables are used, and purpose is to predict a set of dependent variables from joint covariance. So here the examples for descriptive statistics: average job satisfaction score of the employee. We can describe correlation, relationship between training hours and performance. Regression, predicting employee turnover from engagement. ANOVA can be taken as an example for comparing satisfaction across department. T-test is a comparison between two groups, so male and female employees' job satisfaction. Factor analysis is dimension of employee motivation. Structural equation modeling has an example that testing HR framework like job satisfaction, engagement and retention. So students, in today's session, we have tried to have an insight on different aspects pertaining to HR research, starting from identifying the research question with the help of a research problem, developing the research objectives, then developing hypothesis from it with the help of literature review, identifying the gap, and then formulating the objectives and hypothesis, and then finally testing the hypothesis with the help of various statistical methods, tools, techniques, wherein some softwares also help us, what are different types of data, etc. So the whole purpose of this particular session is to make you aware of that how a particular research is conducted in different manner with different research designs, and then that help us infer some theories, and these theories, principles, results or analysis then further guide us to take up certain decisions which can transform the organizational functioning in a better manner. So I hope you have understood this session, and this is the bibliography that I have referred to for this HR research. You may look into this, and you may also read certain journals, certain research articles and research papers from journals of high repute to have more insight on different kinds of HR research perspectives. So this is all from my side for this session on HR research. I hope you have learned and enjoyed the session well. Thank you.